Saw one of the prior videos, I got some wood from a tree guy down the block, and it had the winter bark on it. And I steamed it, and I found out if I steamed it in that steam tube I made for an hour and 15 minutes, I could take off that bark and sapwood and have a pristine back. So you see, I'm always using, you know, like the worst of the woods to make my bows, you know, and then I save the best if a friend wants a bow to make a bow. Well, today I treated myself. I picked a pristine hickory stave that I trimmed, that I took the bark off, the winter bark off, and I'm going to make a hunting bow with it. And I'm not going to put recurves on it because the fire hardened with the back set is, to me, just as fast. And I have a little different design that I've been using on all my bows. And, you know, I'll share that with you. Like other people have shared it with me, and want to pass it on, I'll pass it on to you too, what I'm doing. And the other thing is, when I tiller it with the yardstick, what I'm going to do is measure down from the string groove 2 inches and put a mark. So it'll be a little stiff on the end, a little faster design, a little more aggressive. Let me show you the design that I'm using on this pristine piece of wood I have here. Hopefully you can see it. Okay, so I have, now this will be sanded, so they'll be a little thinner, a little bit thinner. You know, I'm going to cut it on the bandsaw. What I'm doing is, I'm going to, at the end of the design here, I go down 8 inches. Okay, 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. Okay, that's 8 inches. Okay, it's narrow. And then what I do is, I find from the end of my riser here to the end of the tip, okay, where the midpoint is. And at that midpoint, I make it 1 1/4 inches. Okay. And the rest of it at the riser is 1.5 inches. Okay, I make it 1.5 inches wide. So it'll taper down from the riser to the midpoint, from 1.5 inches to 1.25 inches. And then wherever that midpoint is to that 8-inch mark, regardless of the length of the bow, will be from the 1.25 inches to the 3/4 to the 1/2 inch at the tip. Okay. So that's my design that I've been making on my bows lately. And they've been really, it's been really shooting well. All right, this is going to be a 65 inch. I decided to make it 65 inches. It give me a little leeway, and I got to trim off both ends. So this is going to be a hunting bow. And I picked a really nice piece of wood for a change for me. And it's going to be, I'm going to try and make it like 47, 50 pounds at my draw length, and we're going to fire harden it. So that's it, simple. This is going to be my design. It's going to be a well-deserved nice piece of wood for me. That's going to be my hunting longbow. All right, so I'll trim it up and I'll show you when I'm done. Here's the rough side profile, trimmed, and here's the profile of the back of the bow. Because of the narrow tips, I do the tips first, down to that 8-inch mark, and then this here, short from the midsection to that, I will take care of that. Next, let it overhang the 8 inches there so I don't mess that up. And then this part here, from the midpoint to the riser, I can take care of that separately. Let me show you here, see? I can take care of that separately. So I start with the tips, get them nice and clean. Then I do the midsection. Let this overhang, I do the midsection. And then I do the rest of the bow. The riser itself is straight. and then it starts tapering down at the fade out again. So that's the design. So we put it on and we go back and forth here, and it's kind of what we got here. Look. And look at the design of the tips. Okay, it's supposed to be a little faster design. Okay, looking good. And now the other thing is, got to get a floor tiller in, and a lot of wood has to be taken off. I got to really thin this out to make it work. And just so you know, you've been seeing me use this Ryobi belt sander. Any of them work, but all of them have this chute at the end that is higher than the belt. It's higher than the belt to catch dust. And what I did was I had to unscrew this. I mentioned it in one of my earlier videos, I don't know. And what I did was I actually used the belt sander to sand this down so this catch chute here, the dust catch chute, is lower and it won't hit the bow as I'm working with it. It's lower, it still works. It's just lower so I can make passes and not have this interfere being too high. Okay, the belly is the part of the bow that faces your belly. And I'm going back and forth on the belly, trying to get all the saw marks, the tool marks out, bringing it down, and pay attention to both sides. See if one side's thicker than the other. I hold my hand flat and go back and forth. I want to make it even. And there's going to be plenty of weight here to remove, but you can make a pencil line too and follow the pencil line. But you see there's always spots that have a little bulge or a little thicker, and that's okay. Okay, I have a smaller hand, so I went with an 8-inch riser, knowing that there's tool marks on the end that have to be removed, okay? You see they're removed over here. And how I remove that with the belt sander is, as I'm going back and forth, I put some slight pressure here. And what that's gonna do is take back the curve a little, all right? So this 8-inch riser that I have is gonna be, when I'm done, because it's gonna, see how it curves up, takes material back to get these tool marks out, will probably be like a 7.5-inch riser. And see the center point where I put my hand? There'll be plenty of room for a shelf for me, okay? So what I'm getting at is to get the right size bow for you, it's double your draw length plus the riser, okay? Now the riser usually is 8.5, but if you have big hands, make it 9. So double your draw length. If you have big hands, 9 inches, and then add 2 inches. And that is your bow length, okay? It's finished. It's rough cut, it's sanded, and here's the profile. Okay, here's the belly. Okay, the limbs are a 1/2 inch thick. They were thicker when I trimmed it, but I drew a line, and on the belt sand, I wanted them a 1/2 inch thick. I want to make sure when I fire harden this bow that the fire hardening does a good job, goes through this, okay? This is a bow. This bow stave, bow blank here, was a tree that was cut down this year in the winter, and I steamed the winter bark off and it has a pristine back. Okay, this is going to be hopefully the hunting bow that I take in the woods next year. Okay, this is kind of the end of the season now, and I have another place I might be able to hunt next year, but this year it's been a bust. It's been dog walkers and trespassers, and it's been a nightmare. I found out who one of them was, and I confronted them and talked to them, talked to the parents, but it's a little late now. So, okay, back to the bow. Okay, so we're gonna, next I'm gonna get the back set jig out. I'm gonna clamp this on, heat it up with a heat gun and get it to bend. And we got rain coming next few days, and that's okay. I'm just gonna leave this in the garage and let it regain moisture. And we're going to fire harden it next chance I get. But I think this is going to be a fine bow. I think this is going to be an awesome bow. I made it 65 inches. I'm going to put buffalo horn tips on it. And when I tiller it, I'm going to go down from the string grooves 2 inches on each side. Okay, 2 inches from the string grooves on each side to use the yardstick there to the fade out. Make it a little more aggressive and make a fast bow, hopefully. Okay, so I got this beautiful stave all finished out, this bow blank. We'll call it, at this point, it's a bow blank. And I'm heating it up. I'm going to start heating from the center. You see me do this before. You put the clamps on the other side so you can go with the heat gun without hitting anything. And as I heat it up, I'm going to add clamps, and that's going to be it. We're going to get it to the back set jig, and it's going to go in the house because we got rain coming. Okay, as you're heating it up, this limb was over a little bit, and after I got it nice and hot, I was able to, before I put this clamp on, loosen this up a little, move it over and tighten it. Now if you look, everything's in line. It's nice and in line. Okay, and you don't want to put so much pressure. You want the stave, when you trim it and sand it, to be as straight as you can by eye. And then putting it on a jig, if you have to move it just a little bit, it's okay. You'll heat it up good. Heat it up first. Make sure it's good and hot, and then it'll give a little bit. All right, now the other side, I don't know if you could tell, has got the twist, a little twist. And it's so minute that once I heat it up and clamp it down, it'll naturally straighten out. And once you do straighten it out and you have it clamped, heat it up a little more. Make sure those fibers are warm and they're used to that bend, like setting, almost like setting. But don't worry, once you fire harden it, you're going to reverse these clamps one at a time, or add clamps and take clamps off to reverse it for fire hardening, so these screws aren't hanging into the fire. You flip them 180 degrees. Once you fire harden this, that's it. You don't have to worry about it. It's going to take that set, that alignment that you put in, and it's not going to change. I'm very happy. I got it aligned perfectly. And now, as it's cool, once it's cool, which it's almost cool now, I'm going to flip it over and reverse the clamps, and they'll be all set for fire hardening. Then what I'm going to do is get a wet rag and wipe it down, because believe it or not, that heat gun takes moisture right out of it too. And take a wet rag, it never hurts, hydrate it. It's going to be a couple of days before I fire harden it because of rain coming. But that's getting soaking wet with a wet rag to put some moisture back. Okay, the clamps are reversed, all set for fire hardening. And I got a wet rag, a soaking wet rag. And I'm just going to wipe it down. May seem crazy adding all that moisture, but I guarantee you, if I took the moisture meter and tested it after, using the heat gun to get it to conform to the jig, it'd be 0. So don't be afraid to put moisture in it, especially, if you're not gonna fire harden it for a day or two. I'm doing this now, and then tomorrow I'll wipe it down again. It's gonna be raining, and then they'll be all set. And I'll be able to cook it on the next dry day we got, which I don't know when it's going to be. We might have a couple of days, like 3 days, and another batch of 3 days of rain coming. So that's it. I'm glad I beat out the rain today. I beat out the clouds. and it's looking good. I'm really happy that you can't beat hickory. Hickory is my favorite wood. It bends, it's forgiving, and it makes an awesome bow once it's heat treated. So next you'll see it fire hardened and till it. I build up the foil on the ends and crumble some up here. This can be compressed, pushed down to lower the coals. Same over here, but we want it higher because if you look at the jig, we want to make up for that curve in the end to get the heat to the tips. Before you add coals, make sure your gutter is adjusted so it's a little past where the limb tips are on your jig to ensure that that heat goes all and around it. And then add coals, remove your jig, add coals, and light it. Well, it's another little windy day out here in Long Island, and once these coals catch, we're gonna start cooking our hickory. I love hickory. Hickory's, so far to all the woods I work with, hickory is the best because it's accessible, it's a reasonable price, you can cut it down and fire harden it. You can make a bow literally in a few days from cutting it down. So that's when working on a hunting bow for me today, my hunting longbow, because I had a recurve and the recurve developed a little crack. That was my favorite hunting bow. But that recurve was made when I first started making bows a year ago. And I wasn't that great at tillering. I didn't have any information like I did from Keith Shannon on tillering. We're using a yardstick method, and that makes all the difference in the world. You really get an incredible bow when, you know, I suggest you buy the fire hardening DVD that Keith Shannon has at Beckham Outdoors, and or Keith Shannon Outdoors, go to and buy it. It's really changing from getting ripped off buying all kinds of woods from people that's supposed to be premium and the garbage, to be able to go and go out in a lot, get permission, cut a white wood down, and have a bow in a few days. All right, so we're cooking. We're going to start as soon as the coals are white. It'll be about 2.5 hour process. You see me do this before, so I won't make it too long. You know, we'll check it in a half hour. As it cooks, you have to check the clamps because the wood will shrink, and you make sure the clamps are tight. You lift it up, and I'll show you one more time how we get the correct height for the heat once the coals are done. Okay, once again, 2 important things you need are these big fireplace gloves, because anytime you move that jig, there's a chance it could slip off the screws. You want to be able to grab it so it don't fall or fall into the fire pit, and you don't want to get burnt. Then you can do that with these gloves. You don't have to worry about a thing. And the other thing that's important is a stick. And all we do is we're looking at the contour of a stick. And now that these coals are catching, you can see where the riser is. We're going to move some coals away from that riser. Just keep some coals by the fade outs and less underneath here because it's lower. We don't want to burn it and scorch it. The idea is to get this to a nice brown color. Okay, some woods turn black. This turns like a nice brown color. And even if you do get it a little black, like a little scorch, you can't help it. Sometimes when you till it as bows, this is set for a 1/2 inch. I cut them at 5/8 for safety, and then I'm trying to get them to, you know, to bend a little bit, to floor till them. And I usually draw a line 1/2 inch, and I go down to that line to try and make it nice and even, and I'll get it to bend at a 1/2 inch. And even though it's a 1/2 inch and I got it bending, it's a heavy bow, so we have to remove wood. And if there's any dark spots, we'll clean them up nice when we remove some wood for tillering. Okay, we have the coals going now. The coals going really good now. And this is how Keith Shannon came up with the height. And like I said, you can't use thermometers, you can't use a ruler because from the distance from the coals to the wood, because things change, the temperature changes. Today happens to be, we had rain coming up from the south, and it was brought up some nice 60-degree weather we have now before it goes back into the 30s. So you hold your hand right under the limb, and you go 1, 2, 3. You shouldn't be able to hold it there longer than 3. 1, 2, 3. It's a little warm here. I have to knock some coals. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I gotta knock some coals down here. Erase this. Erase it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Knock those coals a little bit down. 1, 2, 3. Gonna raise it up a little more. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Still a little hot here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so just, it sounds crazy me doing this, right? This 1, 2, 3 with my hand underneath going back and forth. But we have a 60-degree day today. And the last time I was doing this, it was like 30 degrees. It was 20 in the morning. And I had it a lot lower. And because it's just the chill factor in the air. And I had more coals too. I had a lot more coals here to generate heat. But because it's 60, it's actually higher. So this is a good example from my prior videos that you can't go by measurement, by anything but that hand that Keith Shannon came up with. Right underneath. 1, 2, 3. You can't hold it under there longer than 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And that's it. That works. It works. It's crazy how we came up with it, but it works. All right, so that's all. We'll show you the start time, even though we don't really have a start time. We're looking for color. It's 12 o'clock. It usually takes about 2 hours to 2.5 hours. And I imagine when it's warmer, it'll go a little quicker. Okay, a couple things to just remember, just in case you haven't seen this before. You got this stick. You keep on knocking off ashes. I added coals. The coals are already catching. We got to check the clamps. Look, they're loose. They're a little loose. They're drying up. It's been about a half hour, and look, the wood's shrinking. Clamps are loose. We can test the heat again. At 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and everybody's hands are a little different. I had somebody come over and they were a little more heat tolerant, I would guess, but the principle is, for consistency, is there. I don't know how we came up with it, but it really works. Okay, so keep in mind, you got to knock off ashes, you got to add coals, and check the clamps. And I know I said the most important thing is the color. You want to get that nice even color from tip to fade out. But when it's kind of like, after you got it for like an hour or so, what I like to do is readjust the clamps. I like to move the clamps over, and more for aesthetic than anything else, I move them over 1 inch or 2 just to get the white spots that are under these clamps darker. And to be honest with you, when you're all done, you can always take a torch and just touch up the white spots, you know, like your color wood. You know, that you could always, that's another option if you want a little even color too. But like I said, once you tiller, this is so thick, even at a 1/2 inch, it's so many pounds that as you're tilling, you're going to remove a lot of it, and there'll be nice like brown highlights in the wood. It'll look good. It's been an hour. I moved the clamps over about 1 inch. I raised it up. I looked. There's some nice light browning going on. It's got a lot more to go. I knocked the ashes off the coals and put more coals on. And once those coals catch, I'm constantly checking for the proper height. And once those coals catch, it'll probably be moved up a peg or 2. Okay, just something to watch out for too. Even though with testing the wood, you got to watch the wood. Sometimes you see smoke, and most of the smoke is coming from the coals. But if you see a little smoke coming from the wood, raise it up, let it cool off a little bit, make sure it don't go on fire. Wood has different, you know, combustion temperatures, usually around 300 wood combust, 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And hardening is what I believe hardening to be is like 240 degrees. I'm not really 100% sure on that. So that's all. Just keep an eye on it. If you have to lift it up just for a second to cool it, knock some coals down. Might be a hot spot with the coals. Maybe the wind was blowing in that area there, causing more heat. There's so many factors. And that's it. You're good. Once it's good, you put it back down again. And, and you do another recheck. See, this is a little hot yet. We've got to go up. As the coals burn, they get a little hotter. So that's why you have to keep on checking. Okay, so we're good, but always watch it. Just have to watch it, that's all. The color is important, not the time like I said before, but it's been about an hour and a half. And as we go down to the right, see it's got color going down to the tips, but it's really light. We got it in the fade outs a little bit, got a little in the fade outs over here going to the left. Right, and it's light on the tips. Since the bow's a little lighter, we're just going to let it go, and it could be a 3-hour cook day. We'll check it in another half hour and see what's going on. Okay, I got the tips angled down. Put a little more heat in that area there at the ends. The right side's done. Just finishing up with the left side to let it cook. It's not to scorch it. I mean, it's to cook it. So I got it the right height. We're going to let it go for however long it takes to brown it, like I did on the right side. And then we're going to I'm going to put it back down level and let the coals run out when I'm done. Going through a lot of coals today because of the wind. You can see that red glow inside the coals. Okay, a red glow, that's from the wind. Okay, we got that, finally got that brown color throughout. And like I said, the time don't matter, but it's almost 2.5 hours. And I'll put it on the table and show you. Okay, I took it off the jig. You can see the color. Once it cools, I'll take it off and show you a closer look and show you the back set. I really love working with Hickory. You see how it conforms to the back set jig when it's fire hardened? Takes the shape, take off the clamps, it remains that way. Look at the back set we have. Okay. This is going to have buffalo horn tips on it. And then we're going to tiller it in a couple days. But what I'm going to do in a couple of minutes is I'm going to go inside. I'm going to get a washcloth I have in a little bucket just for purpose of hydrating, you know, my bows. And I'm going to wet this, soaking wet with a wash rag to hydrate it to put some moisture back in this bow. But this is a really perfect stave. I have thin a limb design. It's going to be a hunting bow. Plan is hopefully in maybe a week or so I'll get the end of the hunting season with this in my hand. All right, so that's it for now. Okay, so this is my bow. It's going to be my hunting bow, and I just want to show you the actual amount of water that I put on this. I have a wet rag, and look, right? You see how I'm wetting it? Okay, I want to try and get some moisture back in this. My moisture meter reads 0 and mine reads 4% or less. So you see what I'm doing? It's soaking wet. And I'm going to do this 2 more times during the evening. And we'll see what happens. You know, if I can't sleep like I do some nights, I'll be up in the middle of the night. I have the buffalo horn tip shaped. I'll just have to cut, you know, sand the taper in here and use a file and get it nice and glue the buffalo horn tips on here with the AE40. I happen to have AE40. A lot of guys say they use Type On and different things, but I have it. I have a little left in the can. Before it goes bad, I might as well use it up on the tips. I know once that epoxy cures, they're not going nowhere. All right? So horn tips, tiller in, shooting, and hopefully I'll be able to get this hunting.